And I think that's really just what you have to do is dive in and ask questions. Speak up if you feel like something's weird or not right. And that's what really helped me. I had a lot of great people throughout the process that were able to answer my questions and were a phone call away when I needed it.
Yeah, I love how you just said, don't be afraid to speak up if something feels weird.
Yeah.
Because that's reference-based pricing in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels weird.
Definitely different than anything you probably had before. That's for sure.
Welcome to ClaimTalk. I'm your host, Danielle Young, and today we are joined by two very special guests, Amy Hansen and Shannon Westin. Shannon is the director of HR for a client of ours, Featherlite Trailers, and she is going to share some of her expertise with us, as is Amy, about utilizing reference-based pricing with ClaimDOC from the HR perspective. Obviously, when you're going into something new like reference-based pricing, it can be a little bit daunting. It can be a little bit overwhelming. And so we thought it would be helpful to share the perspective of one of our clients in the flesh. Shannon, do you want to introduce yourselves to our audience?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. Shannon Westin with Featherlite Trailers. And I'm just really happy to be here today. ClaimDOC has been a great partner, especially for me as I've learned a good amount about reference-based pricing and all the intricacies. So happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. And Amy?
My name's Amy Hansen. I'm a senior relationship manager. I've been at ClaimDOC for 6.5 years.
Can you tell us a little bit about what senior relationship manager does?
Yeah, so as an account manager, we really try and have our fingers in all the pies for all of our clients. So we try and keep a finger on the pulse of everything that's going on. We have service coordinators who do a lot of the day-to-day work, like Robin was your service coordinator, and they do a lot of the digging in and figuring stuff out. And then the account managers are the ones who deal with the clients and the vendors, and we try and maintain that relationship. We try and build as strong a relationship as we can with the clients.
Shannon, do you mind telling us a little bit about your background before you got to Featherlite?
Sure. I've been in the HR space for quite some time. Prior to joining Featherlite, spent about 10 years at another manufacturing facility as a human resource manager. And prior to that, in food manufacturing for several years, kind of in my entry-level HR roles right out of college. So
cool.
Been in HR for quite some time. This is really my first experience, though, working outside of the BUCA plans. So
yeah. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that? So for our audience that does not yet know, because you don't know Shannon yet, Shannon came to Featherlite after ClaimDOC had already been implemented. So the decision had already been made to implement ClaimDOC, and then you came in. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what that was like the learning process, all that?
Sure. It was fairly recently after the decision had been made. I want to say we launched in January, and I joined in March. So it was fairly new to everybody, which was nice, I guess, in the sense we were kind of all learning together. But some of the legwork had already been done. I think the Pave the Way program and things, ahead of time. Not only was I learning kind of a new plan and way of doing things, but I was learning all the people, whether it, be on the healthcare side or our broker partners, et cetera. And there was a lot to learn, and I'm very fortunate. Everybody was extremely patient with me as I asked a lot of questions. And I think that's really just what you have to do is dive in and ask questions. Speak up if you feel like something's weird or not right. And that's what really helped me. I had a lot of great people throughout the process that were able to answer my questions and were a phone call away when I needed it.
Yeah, I love how you just said, don't be afraid to speak up if something feels weird.
Yeah.
Because that's reference-based pricing in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely.
It feels weird.
Definitely different than anything you probably had before. That's for sure.
Correct.
And that's one of the main things that helps the program work well is when the HR person is so invested in learning what different vendors do, who to go to for different things. It makes the program run a lot more smoothly when the HR person is invested and believes what the program is doing and, how it's benefiting the company, saving them money. I took over the plan about the same time you did. And Shannon she hoarded every single member issue. She was not good. I was like, Shannon, the member advocate, have they contacted their member advocate? And she's like, nope, I want to understand this before she starts telling members to contact the MA.
Yeah.
You know, it puts a little more stress, I think, on you, you know, when you're taking ownership like that. But in the long run, you understand almost every question that pops up.
Right.
You know, and if you don't, then you reach out to us.
So Shannon's really seeking to understand the plan was super helpful in her ability to administer and manage it. What kind of things were uniquely new and different about the plan when you came on and started managing the ClaimDOC plan?
A lot of things, really. It's not your standard, you go to the doctor, get your bill, pay your bill, and all is said and done. And while some of the legwork had been done with the Pave the Way program, there was still a lot of questions about the process, a lot of new people joining the team. And so I'm really learning everything from who worked well with our plan, who didn't, who had been nominated and who hadn't, and what that billing process may look like because of it. We're in a fairly rural area, and a lot of the community is connected. Even like our local providers have family members working at Featherlite. We're a fairly large employer in a small area. And so, you know, there was just a lot for all of us to learn. And initially, you know, working with the clinic on what that would look like, or if they ran into a snag, how we were going to navigate through that for our people. Word got back very quickly either way because we're in such a small group, but there were things that popped up. You know, for the most part, our crew is very dedicated and hardworking, and quite honestly, they're fairly tough. And so usually when they're going in to be seen, it's because they need to be seen for something. And so a lot of times, you know, whether it be somebody at the clinic calling and saying, hey, we're running into a snag, can you help us understand where we get the needed approval? Did a lot of work working through that approval process and timeline and making sure that our people were still getting the care that they needed. So that was all new. Just the process in general was a lot different than I was used to. And I think Amy's right in that I held it pretty close. I don't know in the long run that really served us well, but it was something that I had to do until I trusted it.
Sure.
And I really care about our crew. Our ownership team really cares about our crew. And like I said, they're hardworking people that really just need quality care. And I wanted to make sure that they weren't just being handed off to somebody to navigate the process until I fully trusted it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I really appreciate what you just said about how you hoarded the problems at the beginning because you were trying to seek to understand, but you said, I'm not sure if that served us well.
Right.
Do you mind expanding on that?
You know, once it got to a point where I was super confident that our employees were going to get the help that they needed. And it didn't take terribly long, maybe 6 months or so. I really got to see what that process looked like. I actually got to live through it myself after having a baby. And so I really was confident that they were going to get the help that they needed and work through the process in a spot where they would be taken care of. And once that happened, then I really had to do the work of redirecting people again, because that's what ClaimDOC is here for, right? And that's not my job long term. And so I had to then help them build that trust and rapport with ClaimDOC. And virtually, you know, it's removed all that noise from my plate, which has been wonderful. Mm-hmm. So
I knew that we had a win when Shannon stopped hoarding them and the members would call into their member advocate directly. I was like, okay,
yeah,
we made it. We made it.
How long do you think that process took by your estimation? How many months maybe before you felt like Shannon was like, okay?
You know, she said 6, and I think that's about right, because that would have been around September.
Right.
You know, and so then you guys would have had open enrollment a couple months later.
And I was off on maternity leave, I think. So prior to that, right around that time. Yeah. And then, you know, coming back from maternity leave, everybody was in good hands. And the process is really streamlined. Mm-hmm.
Maybe maternity leave was the best thing you could have done.
Probably.
Right? Yeah. It required you to like release all of the things.
Absolutely.
Yes. So would you say that you think it was maybe the first year where the sticky was still happening?
Sure. I wasn't there for the first 3, so probably all in a year. But really the rest of that 9 months where all the nominations were kind of worked through, our team really got to understand, you know, which providers would have an easy process and which may have a tougher process. It took a minute, but it's in a really good spot now.
Good.
So.
Talk to me a little bit about how the water cooler chatter changed from maybe like day one of when you came in to now.
Sure. So we absolutely had some of that initially, and that was a bit terrifying at first coming into this because, we honestly have a super solid benefit in terms of the value of the plan for our people. And reference-based pricing helped us to be able to do that clearly, but it's a solid benefit and hurts my heart in a sense as an HR person to hear people say, no, our insurance sucks, or, this, that, and the other thing. And there was some of that. Initially, it was with kind of one-off providers maybe that had done a knee surgery or something and weren't familiar with our plan. And in those situations, we just really had to stay close to it. I think I partnered with Robin on a couple and Amy on a couple at the time. And they just knew it was somebody that was not in a super good spot with our plan, and really helped to make sure we were giving all options on the table, helping them to understand the process. And it took a little bit of time, but once we knew that and we worked through those specific situations to make sure that employee had the care that they needed, and then the process on the back end was worked through as best as we can. And it wasn't perfect. It was a learning experience for us all. I believe they started to understand. And there was a lot of education that happened over the course, honestly, most of which has to almost happen in that one-on-one employee setting for their unique situation, because it's also different depending on where they're going. But, after you have those conversations and explain why that employee is experiencing some of the things they're experiencing, they start to understand and agree and maybe see the light. And so that really did transform. I mean, those conversations went away. I think the following year, open enrollment, we did spend a lot of time on all employee education and meetings, and where we talked about the costs of healthcare and how they have direct impact on that. And it's the healthcare dollars that we get to spend as their benefit, and we need their help in maintaining their costs. And people really got on board. I think having myself and then the ClaimDOC team that they can call with questions, because we see that a lot where people are like, I know I need to have this procedure. Where does it make most sense for me to go? And I think we have more of those calls coming now into ClaimDOC. Initially, they were coming to me, and then we've rerouted them to ClaimDOC. For the most part, our people want to go where it makes sense. It has been tough. We have a couple kind of key players in our geographical area that, in terms of hospital systems, that don't necessarily play well. And so that's been challenging, but we understand that and we're working through that. And I would say it's going well. So.
I think one of the key things Shannon brought up is education. We do everything we can to educate all of the members on how the process works. And we really want to let them know that they're consumers. Yeah. They can't, it's like buying a car. You're not going to go to some place and spend $5,000 more than if you would have gone to the place down the street. Right. It's trying to educate them that money directly impacts their benefits. Letting them know it does impact the value of their benefits. Right. Having them make smart decisions, well-informed decisions. We sent postcards to the members that had different procedures, and then the costs associated with those procedures at certain local facilities. And I think that helped a lot. So they could see, all right, a knee replacement is X dollars here, but yet it's 4 times that amount at this other provider. And I think that's really helpful to have them see something with the numbers in front of them, rather than just us saying, you'll get a better value here, or your patient responsibility will be less here. It's kind of abstract until they can actually see something physically in front of them. Concrete. I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, something concrete where they can actually look in the same way that we shop for other things, right? Like, because as consumers, we've been taught how to buy things. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily do that with healthcare. No. And so it can become a little bit abstract to some people, I think. Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about the education that you do, Shannon, for your new hires. I'm curious to know how you communicate this.
So we've expanded on that over the course of my couple years with the organization. We've revamped our onboarding practices and the tools that we've got in that process, but there's several great documents, charts kind of explaining what that process should look like. So we make sure that that's provided during orientation and that people have the correct contact information. We do more now at helping our employees set up the apps, so they're connected to all of the tools that they may need down the road. We did a lot of work with our internal HRIS system to kind of link things because there's just a lot of tools needed from a benefit perspective. And so we did a lot of work on that and really just helping people get set up with those tools right away and then know where to go when they have questions. It's been easier as our plan has kind of developed because we have more agreements and or know which facilities may work better for people. Like we're, again, in a fairly small area. So it's been easier as the plan has really developed in our area as well to explain it to people because we can kind of help them navigate that for their specific situation.
Yeah. Amy, can you share with us a little bit about the importance of the HR person's role in communication, education, and ongoing? I mean, how big of a stakeholder is HR in the ClaimDOC solution?
HR is huge. You know, we've had some clients where the HR person maybe didn't buy in as much and they were a little bit more hesitant and they really didn't, in my opinion, educate their members as much as they could. They just had the negative view. This isn't going to work. I don't like this. And so they really didn't do what they could to make the plan run smoothly. And so that kept it bumpy, you know, for the whole year, the whole time. But having HR buy-in, they can explain how the plan works in a positive way, how it's going to impact them. You know, with Shannon, she understood almost every single situation that could come up because she held on to that so tightly in the beginning. And I think it may have been a detriment when you were trying to get rid of it. But at the time, you know, it instilled so much confidence in the members because they knew if they went to Shannon with a question, Shannon was going to get that answer and tell them how it could be solved, what they needed to do, and then kind of gently push them towards their member advocate going forward with those questions. Right. And I think having their buy-in is an invaluable tool. It just makes it run so much more smoothly.
Yeah. Do you believe, Shannon, that your employees are bought in at this juncture to the ClaimDOC plan?
Absolutely. They are now. Initially, not 100%, right? It took some time, just like it did for me. But absolutely, they are now. And they see it. And we have employees transitioning every week, right, to different facilities that bill fairly and will work with our plan well. So absolutely, they're bought in. I will share with you when you talk about kind of the water cooler talk, we even experienced it from our local providers, right? We have employees that are married to physicians and things at the local clinic. And, you know, there was this sense initially that, oh, we don't like Featherlite's insurance. You know, we're not happy with it. And with a few tweaks to some timing, we're actually one of their preferred insurances in terms of making sure the employees have what they need. I think there's a trust there between our plan and the providers that, you know, they're doing procedures that are necessary, right? And that we're being billed fairly. And so that's really working well. We've gotten great feedback this past year on the claims approval process and everything working through it. So you kind of get water cooler talk on both sides when you're in a small town sometimes. Yeah. And it's been interesting to see, but I'm really happy with where it's at. I feel like our employees are happy with where it's at. You have an occasional snag, and that is just going to happen when you have this type of plan. But I think our employees are confident that they have the support of company leadership, ownership, and ClaimDOC to make sure that they're going to be taken care of. And that's critical. You know, it kind of removes a lot of that fear. It can be a scary thing when you get this big bill, right? And you're not sure what to do with it. But I feel like our folks know that we're going to help them take care of the situation and they'll be fine.
Yeah. I do want to touch on the fact that snags happen in the BUCA world too.
Yes, absolutely.
If you go to an out-of-network provider, you get a bill and you're just, you know, shocked. And you call your insurance company and they're like,
sorry about you.
You're out of network.
Yeah.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, having the understanding that the snags happen in both worlds is a good thing. I wanted to go back. You mentioned the providers who are spouses of some of the employees. We had a situation where one of them was at a facility and she was concerned about the pre-cert process. And she thought, oh, you know, this is just going to take too much time. And we got the TPA involved. And by the way, you have one of the best TPAs in the business.
Shout them out. Who is it?
It's Nova.
Nice.
They do a phenomenal job.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I can't give them enough praise. I would encourage any client looking to go to RBP, go to Nova. But
Free plug for you, Todd Martin.
there you go. Hi, Amy B. So what helped, we were able to get all the parties together to try to explain how the process works. And we really allayed their fears and concerns about how it was going to go.
Absolutely.
It was great.
Absolutely.
It was great. Nova is an excellent partner.
They do a wonderful job. Very responsive.
Good.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Good. That's good to know. So I have a question for you, Shannon, around, if you were talking to another HR professional who calls you and says, hey, Shannon, maybe they're a mentee of yours or something. They say, hey, my company's considering going to reference-based pricing. What kind of advice would you give to that HR professional who's just now entering the space? What are some key pieces of intel you would share?
I think finding the right partners is critical.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're going to have enough access to care for your people would be critical. Just really diving in and learning it, because there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
And that's how you streamline the process. But that can be a really great thing, a really great tool. And quite honestly, it feels like the right thing to do when we're talking about our people's benefit dollars. There's so many dollars to go around, and we need to be smart with how we're spending them. It feels like the right thing to do. And so I would encourage them to look at it. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love how you just phrased that. Reference-based pricing just feels like the right thing to do. That's a strong sentiment around here, obviously.
Right. We're not going to say that's a wrong since
we devote our lives to it. Yeah. And I also really love how you explained learning it as an important step. Making sure that you really understand it.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to an HR person who's looking into reference-based pricing?
Getting referrals is helpful, but I think if you can talk to someone who's in the trenches and has been through the experience, I think that's an invaluable tool. Help you know where to focus your efforts. I'm sure there are some things that you didn't really need to focus on, but you didn't know.
Right.
So it might be a more efficient use of time. One of the key things for an implementation of a group is trying to do as much as you can before the effective date. Really makes things flow a lot more smoothly.
Yeah, working ahead, essentially.
Yes. Yes.
Being prepared.
Yes. You want to be on the offensive, not on the defensive. A lot of the times we are more reactive than proactive because a member hasn't brought an issue to us until it's blown up.
Right.
And so if we know something, right away, it's a lot easier to try and make that a smooth, painless process. But if we're not involved, then that's when things get escalated and we have some issues.
Yeah.
So we try and be as proactive as possible. That's the name of the game, but there's no way we can be.
100%.
Yeah. I have a different client. They had a member who was diagnosed with cancer, and we didn't find out until after the member had already determined her treatment program. She's all, she's well down
all
the
way
road.
Down the path.
Yes. And it's at a facility that has, good care, but we have a world-renowned cancer treatment facility in her city that, it's a white glove service. It would have been just a really smooth process. But, she's already
Down the path.
So
we often talk a lot here at ClaimDOC about it's not necessarily when, if problems arise, it's when and how you respond to them. So Shannon, I'm curious about a hitch in the giddy up, if you will, an issue, a problem that arose. If you don't mind sharing a story about a problem and then how we were responding to it, how it got resolved.
So I think back to one, we'll call him the individual that was particularly difficult to convert. I think he's converted now and on board with the plan, but he had a procedure, a knee surgery done at a facility that had very high billing practices, put it that way. And
egregious.
Gouging.
Correct. And there again, we just really identified that we had a process to kind of work through on the back end, and we partnered him with ClaimDOC through the process. And then we just really explained, because there was going to be some procedures coming up in the future, that this may be kind of a difficult process as we work through it if we're going to continue coming to this provider. It's not that we haven't given them the option to work with us and to bill insurance, right? They're being difficult, and there's only so much we can control. We looked at some other options, and he understood all of his options, and I think has been more open to looking at different providers moving forward, and or understanding that he's got some extra steps he's going to have to take if he continues to go to that facility.
Yeah.
Shannon and our team have done a good job of getting members who were going to the challenging providers, egregious billing. It was just not super smooth. We've had a number of them move their care from that facility to one that is a lot more friendly. Right. And I think if those facilities knew that we're able to get members to be like, you're a little too challenging, I'm going to go over here, I wonder if it would change their practice.
Yeah.
Probably not. They have their process that they have to follow. But I think that's a big win for Featherlite members. Absolutely. Is that they have been open to moving their care.
Yeah, to redirect to a more friendly facility. So Shannon, you were talking about converted. I love that term. It's almost like a religious term. But I want to hear a little bit about how you work to convert employees. What do you do when you get an employee that's maybe just not feeling it? They're not into it. How do you work through that?
That's a really great question, and it's really it's almost got to be done on a case-by-case basis and looking at their specific situation and how the bill went through. And a lot of times, I think I found myself at first, before I really understood all the ins and outs of it, getting frustrated, how does this happen or whatnot. But when you get to the bottom of it, 9 times out of 10, you find out, A, the facility won't bill the insurance, and or B, they're billing a crazy amount of money or double billing or whatever it is. Typically, I've found 95% of the time that it's something that facility is doing that is really out of what I would consider fair practice. And so once we get down to the nuts and bolts of it, and look at that and understand other options, they're like, ooh, I kind of get that, or I understand. And maybe it takes a couple of those conversations, but they eventually get it. And like I explained, there's so many benefit dollars that we can spend, and we want to be able to spend those and get them the most value in terms of a benefit package. And that's tough to do if we have a facility, charging outrageous amounts for the same procedure that a solid facility right down the road may do for us at a really fair price.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you would implement reference-based pricing again if you had the choice? And you don't have to say yes just because you're sitting here.
I think given the same geographic location and the same situation and the current state of healthcare, absolutely think I would. I think it's been tougher, like Amy mentioned. We've got a handful of drivers that are kind of located throughout the U.S., and it's been a little bit tougher for that small population. They absolutely have been taken care of. I would say, especially this last 6 months, there's been several outreach points from ClaimDOC to these individuals to make sure that they understand which providers are typically visiting for which services, and so that more of that kind of paved the way can be done, and the process can be a lot more streamlined.
And I think some of those members don't really go very often to the doctor. So we've started having their member advocate reach out to them, I think quarterly, just to make sure that if they have any questions, are they going to see any providers coming up, that they haven't nominated. So
we talked a little bit earlier about how education has played such a huge role in the success of the plan. What other things do you think Shannon has done that other HR directors might consider doing to make their plans successful? Besides obviously seeking to understand, right? You did that. What other ingredients are contributed to the recipe for success?
They have good partners. The TPA is excellent. And I think Shannon's not afraid to reach out with any questions, anything. She knows we're happy to have her ask us the questions. And I think being confident in the ability to get a response from ClaimDOC and the correct response is very helpful. She has no qualms about reaching out to us for everything. And that's how we want it.
Yeah.
We don't want someone to sit in their office and be like, oh, this stinks. I don't know what to do. I'm just going to put it to the back burner. You want someone who's going to be
communicative.
Yes. And she very much is that.
Good.
So yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So recipes for success, educate yourself, make sure you understand what happens when things go awry and that you know how the mousetrap works, which is what you were doing with hoarding of the issues at the beginning. Making sure we have good partners, that's key.
Yeah.
What other success stories or ingredients would you add, Shannon, if you had any to the strategy?
Ultimately, I think it's just critical that you remember that it's critical for these people to have the care that they need, and ownership wants that, and leadership wants that, and these are people I care a lot about, and so making sure that their care and access to the care that they need is up there at the top in terms of a priority, and it stays there. But we can do that and still be smart with our benefit spend, and so balancing both of those things, I think that's where it's been really wonderful working with ClaimDOC. You know, there have been situations where we're kind of in a weird spot and we have to make a decision, and we're always going to make sure that the employee is taken care of. And ClaimDOC supports us in making sure we're able to do that to get the care that they need. But now we have a great established process and partner to help us do that and to make sure we're also being billed fairly.
Awesome. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for making the trip to be here with us today. We certainly appreciate it. And Amy, thank you for taking time out of your busy day. We appreciate your insight and your partnership. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yes, it's been fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of ClaimTalk. Make sure that you like, subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. We're on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And we'll catch you next time.